Hello again. This is the second part in the video series and it's all about building an RJX type flybarless head like this one. Okay, the flybarless head comes in a resealable bag like this one, and inside that there's more resealable bags with bearings, swashlocker arms, the grips, the grip holder and all sorts in there. The kit, however, is not complete. There are one or two things you will need to build a complete flybarless head. It comes without main shaft, so here I'm going to use an Align one. This is from an Align V2 part, because the Hobbyking 450GT is a V2 clone. The kit also comes without Swashplate. This is one I've purchased from Leaderhobby. Yeah, there's the product code. And I quite like this one because it's a nice tight swash plate. There's no play between the two halves of the plate. And it's got the black low wear swash ring in. Bit of a bargain for $3 or $4. And I've used it on my previous flybarless conversion for somewhere between 50 and 100 parts, 150 and 100 flights by now, and it's performed well. It isn't wearing at all. The kit is also lacking damper rubbers. These are just regular Pro or the latter type V2 damper rubbers. These particular ones I've purchased from Leaderhobby. Really cheap. I thought I'd give them a whirl. I'm also interested in the shims that are in there, the little brass shims. Now they go between the thrust bearings and the outer bearings in the grip, and they're a little bit thicker than the ones supplied in the RJX kit. So I'll come back to those later. A couple of other things that I've got that are useful. If you look in the flybarless parts section of Hobbyking, they sell genuine RJX swashlocker arms. Now these are really useful as well for a couple of $, and I'll come back to later as to why. But, well, no, I'll mention it now. Basically, the holes for the ball links fit a little tighter than the ones in the RJX clone kit. Finally, there is a feathering shaft in the RJX kit, but I've found that these from Hobbyking with part number HK-450 Pro-143, they fit just a little bit snugger than the one supplied, so I'm going to be using these in the build as well. Okay, so that's an overview of the parts. I've raided the bag that the rest of the flybarless kit comes in, and I've done one thing. I've separated out all the parts for the blade grips. Don't know whether you can see, but it includes the thrust bearings, the washers, everything that connects to the blade grip. I've put them in two identically weighed containers, a little bit of electrical tape there just to make sure that they weighed the same. And I've just made sure that each grip, when it's made up, is the same weight, so the head will be in good balance to start with. I'd judge that step as optional, and you can either do it now or you can do it after it's built up and just apply a little bit of electrical tape to say underneath the blade grip to balance it. It's up to you whether you do that. I decided to do it. You may not. Okay, the first part of the assembly is to join the rotor head holder to the main shaft. Now this goes on the top of the main shaft, which is the bit without the Align branding. or if you're using a non-aligned shaft, it's the hole that's slightly further into the main shaft than the other one, which is closer to the end. Okay, now the kit doesn't contain enough screws, or the one I received didn't, so you need a bolt that's got at least 10mm of thread on, an M2 bolt and a nut. Okay, I'm going to use some Hobbyking medium thread locker, and how I like to use that is just squirt a bead out onto a piece of plastic or polythene, and then use a cocktail stick just to precisely apply the thread locker where it's needed. So, okay, I'm going to now install this onto the main shaft, and it's just a push fit, and as you can see at the top here there's a choice of holes. I would suggest using the top hole. In other words, you push the head down as far as it'll go onto the shaft, so you get a nice low rotor disc on your helicopter. Yeah, that'll give better performance in theory. So, right, okay, let's get the bolt in. Right, so I'm just going to apply a little bit of thread lock to the threads. You don't need a lot, just spread it round. Let's see if we can get the nut on. This is where I'm all fingers and thumbs. Right, that's on. Let's just nip it up. Never got quite enough hands, but okay. And the correct tightness is to nip it up, not, you know, wrench it round as hard as you can, but just snug everything down. That's the first part of the rotor head build done. Next, I'm going to assemble the mixing arms. That's these things. So there's two of them. Okay. And then there's four little bearings that go inside them. Now they've got lips on them. Oh, that shows clearly. Now the kit is missing something in my opinion, and that's these tiny little M2 washers. And I'll show you what they're for as we go along. If you've got some, use them. If you haven't got any, I wouldn't worry about it, but I'll show you why I think they're important as we go along. Okay, I'm just going to take this moment just to apply a tiny bit of oil to the bearings. This is an optional step as well, it's your call as to whether you do this. You don't need a lot. This is the Bell 107, it's a synthetic oil that I use on my helicopters. It's actually from model trains. Right, what we then do is press these bearings, press these bearings into the mixing arms, and they're a very tight fit. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to have them in the hobby vise. Okay, so here I am with the hobby vise, and we just press the bearing in there. Okay, now I've had a little gaff here. I've just realised the webcam wasn't recording. But what I've done, I've put a bearing in one side of each. Then put the washer inside, and then press the second bearing in from the other side. using the vise, and it's better to use a vise rather than drift something in with a small hammer or whatever. It's a lot better for the bearings. I'm afraid I forgot to start recording, so I missed that bit. So we've got a bearing. We've got a bearing pressed in from either side with a washer in the middle. If you forget the washer, don't worry about it too much. These are really difficult to get back out, these bearings, once you've pressed them in. But if you do have a washer available and you use it, it's probably for the better, because its purpose is a bolt goes through the middle of the bearing, and it's to ensure that the load is carried through the inner race of the bearing. As if the washer isn't there, the load isn't transmitted the same, and it could cause premature wear. So if you've got one of these washers, use them. If you haven't, it's not a big issue. Okay, the next task is to add these swashlocker arms to the mixing arms that we've just pressed the bearings into. This is where I'm going to deviate slightly from the RJX clone kit as supplied by Hobbyking. Here's the stuff that comes with the kit. Now these swashlocker arms have a slightly larger diameter hole for the ball link. Now Hobbyking do supply replacement ball links for your swashplate, but I've hit a little problem here. I can't for the life of me, without risking damaging it, undo the ball links on the swashplate that I've purchased for this project. They've been factory thread locked in place. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use these RJX, genuine RJX swashlocker arms that have a slightly tighter diameter hole for the ball linkages and will happen to fit perfectly the swash plate I'm going to use. So that's why I'm going to deviate slightly there from the script. Right, let's have a look at the parts. So the correct alignment that you want is the bits that stick out from the mixing arm should be on the same side as the, if you like, the curve, the bend away of the swashlocker arm. So as it's lined up there is how we're going to fit it. And we're going to do them both like that. So there's one I've joined together, and what I have to do then is take one of these little rods and insert it through the swashlocker arm and the mixing arm, like that. We'll do the other one. Put them together first and roughly line up the holes, and we'll push it through like that. It's just worth making sure that they're reasonably free in the hand. May have to just take them apart and take off any loose mouldings or little shards with a hobby knife if there are any. That's fine. And now it's time to do battle with the circlips that go on the end of these little rods. And I'm just going to go and find a thin-nosed pair of pliers or some tweezers and get them put on. Oh, the joys of applying these little circlips. There, that's one on. I'll do the other three off camera. We get the idea. It's a bit of a battle. Okay, now I've done battle with the circlips and got my swashlocker arms ready. The next thing to do is to fix them to the main rotor holder. Okay, if we have a look in the bag of parts for the head, you'll find two spacers. There's one of them and there's the other. These are important. These go between the mixing arms and the rotor head holder, like that. Can you see? They go there. Whoops. Okay, you also need the two longest bolts in the kit. So let's put this together. First though, I'm going to apply a little thread lock using my cocktail stick to the threads inside the main rotor holder, like that. Okay, that's sense. Okay. So the bolt goes through there. The spacer goes on there. And then it goes into the hole on the rotor head. And then we just tighten it up. Okay, that's nice and free. Just make sure it's nice and free, which it is. Again, it's a snug it up rather than tighten it up. And that's fine. And we'll do the other side the same. So it's the bolt through the bearings, spacer on, and then into the head. And tighten it up. There we go. Okay, now we've completed the best part of the rotor head holder. I'll turn my attention to the blade grips. And this is the order of assembly. An inner bearing goes in the inner side of the grip. Another bearing, exactly the same, goes in the outer side of the grip. Then we have a thrust washer, that's one of the brass washers. And then we have the thrust bearing. Now what I like to do to these standard bearings, the inner and outer, I like to just put them in place with a little stud lock. That's this red Loctite. So again, I'm going to apply it as before. You don't need a lot. I'm going to use my cocktail stick to just carefully apply a little bit to where the bearing is going to be seated inside the blade grip. Just like that. Not a lot, because we don't want it to soak round the edges and get inside the bearing. And then we'll put the bearing in, nice and square, and press it down like that, all the way home. Now they fit fairly loose, that's why I've stud locked it in. If it was a nice tight fit and I had to use the vice or a drift of some description, then I probably wouldn't bother with the stud locker. But because they're quite loose, I like to stud lock them in. And it's the same for the inner bearing. So again, a little stud lock. To where it's going to sit. Okay, and then insert the bearing. Now I found a little jeweler's screwdriver here is quite a useful drift. Let me line up the bearing. Okay, I'm just going to put that in there and push the bearing home. There we go. That That's the bearing fitted, and I'm going to do the same for the other blade grip. Now the bearings are properly seated, the outer one can take a little bit of drifting home, but now that they're properly seated we can apply the arms to the blade grips. Okay, it's the 4 shortest bolts in the kit that we need to use for this, and I'm going to do it, just apply a little bit of thread lock to the holes that have been drilled into the blade grips, like so. Okay. And now I think I'll put the screws in place. There we go. Don't over tighten, the metal's quite soft, so just finger pressure, let the thread lock do its work. Just do them sequentially. Okay, and then I'll do the same to the other grip. Before I do that, we'll just add the ball link to the end, I think. Okay, I'm going to use the same technique, get a bit of thread lock on the stick, wet the threads, and then just screw in the ball link like so, and just nip it up. There we go. So that's the first blade grip done, and I'll do the other one off camera. Right, now we've got the blade grips assembled. I like to leave them overnight really to let the stud lock do its work and bind to the bearings, but one last thing we can do is prepare the thrust washers. Okay, so we need to grease them up. Now the order which they go is, there's 2 slightly different sides. The one with the slightly larger inner diameter hole in the middle, yeah, and that's the correct way around. I'm just using a 3mm jeweler's screwdriver just to feel. But that one's definitely a smaller diameter and this one's larger diameter, and that's the correct order. That one goes in first, then the thrust washer with the ball side goes in the grip like that, followed by the one with the smaller inner diameter. So let's get those greased up and it'll all become a little more apparent. I'm just using general purpose grease here, and I'm just going to apply it quite liberally to the 2 washers. And to the bearing itself, packing it well in. Oops, that's a little bit too liberal, but you get the idea, you can wipe off any excess. Okay, so that's that one packed. Just smear some on the other side as well. Okay, so that's the grease applied. So, larger diameter, more open face of the bearing. We take that and we turn it over so the more open face meets the larger inner diameter washer. Then this, turn that over to go on top of the more closed face like that. Okay? And then I'll just pick it up and just show you how it would be inserted. So I'll pick it up like that, look. Okay? So the larger diameter hole is on this side and the smaller diameter on that side, and that would go into the grip like that when we're ready to assemble. Okay, one last thing I'm going to do before I allow the various thread lock and stud lock that I've applied to the grips dry is I'm going to build up half of the feathering shaft. Now, just a little word about what I'm doing here. I'm going to deviate from the RJX clone kit Hobbyking supplied and use these alternative Hobbyking supplied feathering shafts. Now that's because these seem to be just about 1/2 mil shorter in length, and it all fits together a little snugger. So I've got to use those out of preference. And also I feel that the screws are a little bit harder, a little bit better quality in this these parts. So I'm going to choose to use these. Here's one I've fished out the bag already. Just check it rolls nice and smooth and is not pre-bent. It isn't. Roll it on glass if you want to be pedantic. Also, a word about the thrust washers. That's these little brass things. I'm going to use the Leaderhobby ones out of this, the damper rubber set I bought from there, because they're slightly thicker at 0.3 millimeters than the ones that come in the RJX clone kit, which are 0.15 millimeters thick. Now I found I need 2 on each side, but rather than use 2 on each side, I'd rather just use 1, just for simplicity. So I'm going to use those as well. Right, I'm going to apply a little thread lock. I like to apply it directly to the threads of the feathering shaft. There we go. A bit more. Okay. Get the screws out. Okay, so take the screw, apply the washer, like so. Pick up the thrust bearing assembly that we've previously made. Larger diameter washer plus the open face goes onto our feathering shaft like that. Take our bolt washer and thread it into the feathering shaft. Okay, take it all the way in, and I'm just going to put this in the hobby vise. A little bit of tissue to protect it and just nip it up. Okay, so just nip it up. Like that. There we go. And this, yes, so what would go on now is one of those thrust washers that is stuck. So these thrust washers that I've spoke about, let's pick one up. That would go on there like that. Okay, and then that, when the stud locks had a chance to dry, could be inserted into the blade grip like that. And I shall come back and do that shortly. Okay, now we're ready to insert our damper rubbers into our rotor head holder. We use a little silicone grease here to lubricate their passage into the rotor holder. I could squirt a bit out onto my bit of plastic. And apply it just a little bit. Just dip the rubbers in there. And press them in to the rotor holder. And again, a little bit, oops. Any excess. And one into the other side, like so. And whilst we're at it, we can just make sure we've got a little bit of silicone grease inside the damper rubbers. We use silicone grease because it's totally rubber safe, whereas petroleum based greases tend to swell and harm rubber. Okay, I've given things a chance to set overnight now, and there's a couple of points I want to make before I proceed any further. What I like to do is I like to oil with my Labelle 107 the bearings inside the blade grips now that the stud lock is cured, and I just put a drop on the shielding, and that can work in. It's the same for the other grip. And of course the insides. Not so critical the inside one because, the outer bearing, because the centrifugal force will push the oil through the bearing from the inner one. I'll still put a drop on anyway. Don't put too much on, or else it will take the grease out the thrust bearing. Okay, and the other point I want to make is a bit of common sense required with the rotor head holder now. Hobbyking supply these collars, and I don't know whether you can see that clearly. Yes, it shows okay. But they're flat-sided, and the flat side normally goes up against the damper rubber. But in some cases, it depends on the damper rubber that you use. It's not going to go up on the damper rubber at all. It's going to rest. Does that show? It's going to rest against the metal of the holder, so that's clearly no good. So what we're going to have to use is the Align type collars. These are a thinner collar, they're cylindrical, and they do rest and compress the damper rubber, which is what we want. So we'll use that type when we assemble the head, which we're going to do next. Right, so we've got our half assembled feathering shaft with a thrust washer on there. Okay, I'm just going to pre-wet the threads with a little thread lock using my cocktail stick applicator. Then we don't risk getting the what's the centre of the frame? There it is. There we go. Alright, so that then goes through the blade grip so. Okay. And then our collar, our cylindrical collar that came with the feathering shaft, goes over the top. There we go, that was a little tight, it's on now. Okay, now a little bit of silicone lube on the spindle itself. And then this whole assembly goes through our rotor head holder. I'm just going to support it with a screwdriver. Oh my god, I've not got it in the vise very tight. There we go. Okay, support it with a screw. Oops, don't worry if the damper comes out the other side. And through it goes. Okay, with that done, now we need to do a little assembly on the other blade grip. Our thrust washer needs to go in like so, and then our thrust bearings need to go in. Now, just let me pick those up. Okay, I've got them on a screwdriver. So the larger diameter washer goes to the inside. So let's get those in, like so. And now we're ready. Oh wait, we need the collar, the little collar. That needs to go on the feathering shaft. Just let me support it from the other side. And get that little collar on. Does it want to go on? There we go. Okay, and now we are ready to install our other blade grip. So just line it up. And on it goes. Now we've got our screw, bolt with washer, and we could guide that towards its home. Of course, we're going to need to support the other side here. And we can begin to do up the threads. Like so. There it goes. Right. Now, again, this is not a case where you nip it up as tight as you can. It's more a case of snugging down the bolts. So, just have a look at that. Kind of the tension that a child could do it. Okay, so we'll just, there we go, that's snug. Okay, so there they are, and they spin. There's just the slightest bit of resistance in there, and trust me, that'll wear off as the bearings bed in. It's just a consequence, I think, of the Hobbyking kit using cheap bearings. If it's tight and it feels notchy, you need to back out the screw a tiny bit and re-tighten. But that's gone together beautifully. So yeah, just to reiterate that, small bit of knottiness is okay, but if it's stiff and notchy, no, you need to take another look at it. And that's going under really nice light pressure, and there's no waggle in the grips. Great. Okay, now we're ready to install our pitch arms, and that is the arms that will go from the blade grips to the swashplate linkages. Hobbyking supply these in the kit, as you can see they're there, but what I like to use is these Taro adjustable linkages, and these are great because one end is a reverse thread, so you can adjust the length of the linkages on the head without having to pop off a ball link. It makes for very simple field adjustments for blade tracking, for example. Good stuff these, for $3 or $4. Okay, so another point worth mentioning is on this Hobbyking head, Hobbyking have chosen to use slightly larger balls on the linkages. Now they do supply very good ball linkages in their kit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Hobbyking linkage on one end of the adjustable rods and a genuine Align. Let's see if I can find one. There we go. Genuine Align linkages on the swashplate end of the link rods. Now the magic number, the length that we're aiming for between the ball and the swashplate, the centre to the centre of the linkage, is about 42 millimeters. So I'm going to preset my linkages to that length and then add them in, and then I should be within a couple of turns of the desired pitch when I'm setting up the helicopter. So here's one of the larger Hobbyking linkages. There's the Taro adjustable rod, and I'm just going to screw on the Hobbyking ball link, and it's pretty much all the way to the end. So you start to feel a little bit of resistance. It goes a long way. Okay, now for the genuine Align one. These can be a little tight, so I'm going to recommend running a 1.2 millimeter drill through them, just to get it started. There we go. That step's optional. And again, this is pretty much all the way to home. Okay, let's have a look. See how we do for length. Okay, so we're pretty close to the 42 millimeters I wanted to set up there, and I'll just get it to 42 off camera. Okay, just a little aside, I've hit a little snag here. This other linkage rod, adjustable link rod, the reverse threads, it happens to be the ones on this side, aren't formed correctly. I can't get a plastic ball link on the end, so I'm going to have to discard that and just use a standard one, non-adjustable for the other side. That's not a problem. I only need one adjustable to adjust the blade tracking, and I know the rough length that I'm going to need, which is 42mm from the centre of the ball link to the centre of the opposite ball link, so we'll go with that. And I'll just add one Hobbyking link to one end and a genuine Align to the other. Okay, I think that's good enough. Let's just have a look. Yeah, does that show? That's pretty much 42. That'll do. Okay, now if we look really closely at these, on the Hobbyking one, will it show? No, it won't show, but there's a number. And that's going to be outward facing when we apply it to the ball link, which we might as well do now. Okay, that's on, and they're really nice fit as well. There's no slop in those linkages. And then on the Align one, there's a letter A. Does that show? No. But there's a letter A just there next to my fingernail. And that goes to the outside as well on the Swashplate linkage. So let's just do that. Where's the swash? Okay, feed the swash on. And so when it clicks together, the A is to the outside, like that. Okay. And I'll just off camera, I'll get those fixed on and apply the other side. Okay, so let's just clip on the swashlocker arms to the swash plate, so let's just push them together like that, and then it's easier to do the pitch link arms. So we'll line up both sides together. Okay, they're not going to go on without a fight, so we'll use the pliers. 1, 2. Oops, got it stuck. And there we go. There is our completed flybarless head, and that's really nice, smooth. Just let me hold the swash plate. There's absolutely no slop. I've tried to twist the, there's no slop in the linkages. It's really nice and smooth. If you like, you can add just a dab of the silicone oil to the swash ball. Just a dab. Got a spot of lube to the shaft. I don't want a tiny spot, I just work it in. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. So there we go. That's how I would set about building an RJX type 450 flybarless head. Thanks for watching all, and I hope that was useful. Apologies if it was a little long-winded, but I wanted to go through it thoroughly. And yeah, so for the next video I'm going to discuss installing the head on the helicopter, installing the servos, and installing the Taro ZYX onto the helicopter. Then on the following video after that, I'll discuss the software setup of the Terra ZYX. Thanks for watching.